Okay, ji. Let's go live. I think this is going to go on YouTube. Let me start. So, Assalamu alaikum everyone. Let's start this session of Imamba Tech Talk with Faisal Mushtaq. So first of all, I want to thank Faisal. So you created this slot late in your time, early morning for us, but it's late on your side. So really appreciate it. Quick introduction. Well, I'll give you a lot more time to give an introduction. But Faisal is a very senior engineering professional with loads of leadership experiences, based both out of the Valley and SoCal. He's been in San Diego for the last 10, 15 years, but started from the Valley area. And in that 25 plus years of experience, he's done everything. I think he's built teams, he's grown teams, he's scaled teams, he's worked in software, hardware, he's worked in cloud, he's now working in an IoT solution company. So there are tons of things for him to learn. And I think that's where this fireside chat is going to be focusing on. I want to structure this around your journey of how you've gone through different stages and ask you perhaps what things tickled you, how you handled challenges in different stages of your career. And then after we've taken like maybe 30, 35, 40 minutes, we'll open up the floor to the people to ask questions. And then from there, I hope there'll be some interactive session to the top of the hour. So with that, I think I'll let you sort of give the first softball question is, what's your introduction? What's your life journey? How did it start from Pakistan all the way to where you're at?
Yeah, I think so. First of all, Assalamu alaikum everyone, and thank you, Afan, for setting this up and giving me this opportunity, and also Imamba. We were planning to do this in person a few weeks ago when I was in Pakistan, but unfortunately it didn't work out. So still glad that we are able to connect. My journey, so I've been in Valley for, I'll say 25 plus years in different roles, which I'll go over. Started in Pakistan, did my undergrad from NAD, then went to US for master's. I did my master's from Purdue, and then started my career in the Valley. It's a very long time ago. I know there are a lot of young folks here, so I think it's mid 90s, and at that time it was I will say a lot of these like internet and the technology companies were still small. I mean, Cisco was 6 billion. Now it's, for 50, 60 billion company. So I joined Cisco Systems, spent a decade there. Was lucky that I ended up in the right team. So the team that I was part of came through Cisco through an acquisition, and that team is still around. They just sold the company to AMD. Pesando Systems. So they were really fast moving while being part of a large company. So that from right out of college, it gave me that experience of a maturity of a large company, but the speed of a startup, right? So we launched 5 or 6 products in 10 years, which for a company of size of Cisco, from inception to customer shipment, it's pretty unheard of. So I was there for 10 years, played different roles, led different teams. And went through the highs and the lows. So the highs was at that I don't know, many of you remember, at one time Cisco became the company with the highest market cap, even surpassing GE. But right now those two companies doesn't matter. It's the fangs of the world. But and then we had the post-dot-com burst that also saw. So I think what happens is every phase of your life, you go through experiences which you have not experienced before. And I think those are opportunities for learning. So you learn from it. You see the highs and the lows, the yes and the no's. And I think that's what the lesson is primarily, that keep learning throughout your life. After a decade in Cisco, I decided that I want to be part of something exciting and build something from ground up. So I started my journey in startups, and we'll go into detail. But so the first company was Vicorus, then it was Ortiva, then it was PlumGrid. Different roles, mostly leading and building and scaling large engineering teams. And also, it was very interesting to go from well-structured. Yeah, it's like startup is like somebody throws you, you don't know how to swim and throws you in a pond and you just learn.
Yeah. Hello.
I think Faisal is stuck. There was issue on his
Number.
side.
We lost
Uh,
you. We
we,
lost you for a minute. Like we lost you for a minute.
oh, oh,
So
oh, okay, sorry. So after spending 12 years in startups, I did consulting for a couple of years, and even that company was acquired. So I have a pretty lucky trend in that respect. And then for the last 3 years, I'm a CTO of a public company. It's called Sleep Number. We are in the sleep technology space, and leading a global R&D organization there, which I can go deeper into. I've also been investing, so in angel, part of different angel groups and helping, mentoring wherever I can. Part of a couple of nonprofits like Open, Thai, Tech SoCal, a bunch of them. So if any questions, I can answer. But I think this is like a high-level view of my journey.
excellent, excellent. Yeah, that's what we were talking about. Like loads of experiences over 25 years, and they vary over many different scenarios. So the first sort of journey, I mean, in some sense, from the perspective of engineering management, happened when you went from Cisco into your first role at Orteva and then Alert, right? You were no, sorry, you were actually building Vycorus first, right? So Vycorus
Vicos,
was,
yeah.
yeah, the Vycorus initiative, which was your startup. That along with side, I would also combine Orteva and Alert were sort of this leading, growing teams, building them teams with several with offshore offices as well. So there are dual challenges, right? I mean, one, you're building the team, scaling it from scratch, which was Vycorus, but also you were sort of having to deal with offshore organizations. What were the challenges that you faced initially? How did you handle them, and what were the significant learnings from there? That section of your life.
Yeah, very good question. So my first foray was Vicor. So I was part of the um, uh, first three people that were apart from the founder Rehan, myself, and there was one more person. So we started this, and initially coming from 10 years in a large, pretty well organized company. First shock was like I'm sitting in a back room of a building and with no windows and 6 desks, and we have these grand ambitious plans. So the first lesson that I learned is that self-confidence, I think. So that yes, we can do this, right? So that's the first step that you have to take. Because and then second thing is that it's there's nothing is defined for you, right? When you go to startup, there's no I mean, three people, there's no HR, there's no IT, there's no, so you are everybody, right? So you should be able to go and take any challenge, and nothing should be beyond your that I don't want to do this, because startups, everyone has to do everything initially. And this is an example when you're building from completely zero to, and then I'll give you examples where they are a mid stage, and then how do you grow that. So Vicorious, I think, was a great experience. That first obviously was to assemble a team. So the first few hires are very important. I would say the first 10 hires are the key. I personally believe, I will give you an example, and currently, like, even in a large company like Sleep Number, hiring to me is a very important decision. So the quality of team you bring in can really take your company to the next level, the talent you bring in. So especially the first anchors that you bring in. So first thing we did was to make sure that we bring in really good talent. Obviously, you need to have a good problem that you're trying to solve. You need to understand the market you're going after, but you need to have a solid team, right? So the team is the first thing to focus on. As we started building, we realized that to manage our to, like, both for financial arbitrage, like make sure that you can optimize your dollar that you have raised from your VCs, and also to make sure that you can get talent, right? A lot of people think offshoring is for cost reduction or is it for cheap labor. I think that's a misconception. Talent is global these days. Anybody with a MacBook and internet connection can do anything, sitting anywhere in the world. So with that, I mean, that was not so, I'll say, understood at that time. I'm talking still 2000, mid 2000s. So, but we were looking for talent. So we started. So first we went to India. So I think I myself went to India. We set office there, and built a decent team. I think 25, 30 people there. And then obviously later on we acquired a Pakistani company in Karachi, and that became our Pakistan section of the team. So we had a presence both in India and Pakistan in Vicorious. So I think when you're building something from the ground up, first you have to bring the first 7 to 10 people have to be the key. Then you have to, I think you go step by step, right? So when we got our first customer potential, then we started accelerating. So at that time, we started adding a lot more talent. So you need to kind of define the structure. What are the areas you are investing? What talent complements what talent, right? So and how do you get 24/7 velocity, right? So a lot of those things came in. So we built teams that had a presence both in Pakistan and US, or Pakistan and India. So that gave us that concept of global team. So that gives you that coverage that you hand over the work and you. So a lot of those policies we implemented, a lot more open communication. We also did stock options, which was it's at that time a lot of people saying, "Give me more money." What is the stock? And I think now a lot more people. I'm talking still 20 years ago. So I think it helped because a lot of those people stick around, and the company was acquired by Tell Labs, and I think they were hopefully benefited from it. The key is when you have offshore, first you have to make sure that it's integrated well, right? So if you have a hands-off approach of offshore teams that just throw off the work, or so I always even now, I have teams in 5 different countries. Our stand-ups have people from all over. I mean, and they are the squads or the agile teams are spread across geolocations. Doesn't matter. That gives you that inclusiveness that you want to get that chemistry between the teams and the communication and all. The benefit we had in Vicorious was that we had our own team, right? So we set up our own offices. These were Vicorious employees. There are examples when you have offshore partners, which I'll also touch upon. But I think in this case, we had that. So there was that advantage also. Obviously, frequent interaction, both we visiting and also making sure the key leads are visiting US and spending significant amount of time with the team helps. So I think it's basically about building the right team, communication, collaboration, and making sure everyone is. It's one team methodology mindset, right? That we are just one team, although we are physically distributed. And these days is very easy with all these tools. Location doesn't matter. I can be right now in US, or I can be in Greece right now, and it doesn't matter. You will see me on Zoom like this, right? So that's the power of the connectivity and the distributed compute. So I think a lot of learnings there. I think the first learning I will say is it gave me confidence that really we can, I can do it. We can do it. Second is the second thing was just how can such a small team do something when large companies have hundreds of people? And first I was stuck at that point that Cisco, I had hundreds of people and now 6 people will do this. How is that possible? And that's the magic of getting the right team in place and the right commitment and the right vision and the right dynamics, then magic happen. So that's what the point was. The numbers doesn't matter. If the number was the case, then the whole concept of startup is a moot point, right? Mm-hmm. Large companies have so many resources. You will say how can a small company of 20 people build something that hundreds and hundreds of people in a large company cannot do it?
Yep.
So that's the key, I think. So yeah, I think those were the first few learnings, and obviously the building the right talent both in US, like locally, as well as the same priority should be given when you bring in talent. So
Yep, great point. So essentially, self-belief, commitment, vision, hiring the first few people to be aligning with that, right? That's excellent point. So moving on to the next stage, which I've sort of divvied up into, where you've sort of gone from having your earlier companies were more hardware plus software, right? So you were doing with network switches plus software on top of it, and some combination of that with video and all of that. Then you moved into the Plum Grid and global your global logic company sort of phase. That's a software only play right now. So it's still networks, but it's software only play, and the entire engineering team is doing, and even at that point there was some concept of microservices and services, and
yeah.
some sort of containers stuff was happening. When you moved, was that change from going from an area which we're comfortable with more into purely software? How was that as a change, and did it change any of your strategies in terms of engineering management? And then the second thing that I saw that was aligning over here, it seems like in this phase of your life, you're not sort of bootstrapping a team. You were actually being inserted into teams which were built, but were facing challenges because they had grown too big and they were like, things were not working out. So I remember that was the case for PlumGrid for sure, where you were brought in because the engineering was messing up, right? And so I wanted you to reflect on from those two angles in that phase of your life.
Again, a great question, Afan. So I think I'll just quickly touch upon one thing and then slowly come to your question. So your point is right that the first, I'll say, few companies that I worked on, Cisco, Vicors, and after Vicors I went to Ortiva, that was also a system solution. So it was hardware and software solution. Ortiva, I get to experience, I'll say, a team that's struggling to deliver. So I think that was completely, I'll say, not complementary, but completely opposite to what Vicors I experienced. And it was intentional also. So I think one thing that I wanted to touch upon is that every step I took in the career has a common thread of technology, software, hardware, or some combination of that. But it's not the same thing, right? So a lot of people spend 25 years, they just do networking, from one company of networking after another, right? So intentionally, I tried things that complement what I've learned, but pushed me to learn something new or take on a new challenge, which I've never done before. So Vicors was again a challenge because I've never done startup before. And, so that was a learning. But then when I went to Ortiva, it was a different challenge. It was amazing technology that came out of a university, but they were, for the last 3 years, struggling to commercialize it, right? Because the maturity you need to commercialize the technology is different. What works for a demo, for 3 people, might not work for hundreds and millions of people, or a telco grade quality that you need, right? So that was intentional. And then I think since your question was PlumGrid, I'll come to that. So PlumGrid was the same. So when I joined PlumGrid, it was software only, which was unique. I've never done software only. It was always a system solution. Some commonalities that it had with Ortiva, that it was still, I'll say, challenges were there to deliver. And I think the key is discipline, right? So what happens is that you need to, engineering requires discipline, and whether it's quality testing, whether it's your CI/CD, whether it's your software development, release planning, that discipline is hard when you are bootstrap a lot of startups, because you're just working for survival. You said, whatever works, you want to do it. But once you reach a point that you have customers, say first 2-3 customers, you have revenue coming in, at that point you need discipline, because your quality, stability, your commitment to delivery to your customers is of essence, right? So that was, I think, the point that we did there, and one, I will say, a big part was played by the Pakistan team. So this was again my second foray into Pakistan after Vicors. because Ortiva in the middle was in India. So when I came to Pakistan and realized that we have a decent team in Islamabad, and we had some leadership changes also when I joined. So there was a lot of skepticism about Pakistan. Since I had previous experience of the team, and then I went to Islamabad, met the team, and really amazed by the young, passionate, hardworking team. So that also played a big part because a lot of discipline. I started with Pakistan team first because everyone is reporting to me. So I started there and then make sure that slowly when the releases were streamlined and the benefits were visible to rest of the org, it starts becoming more pervasive. I think a lot of companies confuse the roles also, right? So a lot of places you'll see you have, COO, CTO, VP of engineering. And I think to me, it's a very clear definition. Some people are there to drive the vision, and somebody have to make sure that vision is delivered with high quality, on schedule, with discipline. And those are sometimes contradictory roles because that's where the leadership comes in. How do you balance that? So I think in PlumGrid, I think in 2 years we made good progress. I think the team in Pakistan was a surprise. And I'll give you an example. We went through M&A there, and again, this was still 6-7 years ago. The perception of Pakistan in broader VC community and corporations was, I'll say, still not that positive. So what happened was, I do remember, with the team that we had, we pitched to 3 leading companies, and one of them acquired us, VMware. But there was another one that I worked previously, and I mentioned the name. That was my first company, so we pitched to them also. For 8-hour meeting, 4 hours were spent on with their lawyers on like, what is this Pakistan thing that you have? How does it add risk to that? And me and Ali Khayyam, we were defending and explaining, right? So that, fortunately, that has improved a lot in the last few years. With a lot of money flowing in, startups being successful, Kareem, and then onwards, I think that perception has changed. So because perception always lags reality, right? You might say this is an old perception. Why people are thinking like that? But perception takes a while too. So that's why I think it takes a while to build credibility, and also it takes a while to change perception. So that was the interesting experience, and that I went through because I could see the talent. I say, this amount of talent that we have in the Pakistani team. I mean, to me, this is a no-brainer, right? That's what I was trying to convince them. So I think, but the key was, I think your question was, when you come to I'll say so getting your first customer is first step for a startup. Getting your second, the third, the fourth, that's where the key happens. A lot of startups falter there. What happens is they get the first customer and they don't manage it well. So what they become a custom shop for the first customer, right? And then you cannot scale them. You can only scale when you build something that many customers can purchase with minimum customizations, right? Because if you're doing customizations for each customer, and given a startup with constrained resources, it becomes, I'll say, almost an impossible task. So what happens is that this is where the discipline comes in, right? Somebody says, "Oh, I'll give you $500,000 or $1 million," and then you say, "Okay," and then you become the custom shop, and that's what so getting your, I think, first customer, and then what I say is getting your fifth customer is the key. Can you cross 5, and then 10, and then right? So that's a very important stage of a company, that you have proven your product, that at least you have paying customers. And now your focus should be discipline in delivering with quality, and making sure your roadmap, whatever roadmap you have defined, the feature set that you have committed, it's delivered in the time that you have promised. And making sure commitments you're making to your second, third, fourth, fifth customers are delivered on time, because that will give you that amplification. And that's where a lot of companies falter, because the mechanisms you need to get 3 people in a garage and the first car, and this is mostly, I'm not talking consumer apps or consumer play. I'm talking about B2B or enterprise products, right? Where your customer is not a consumer. So what it means is that whether it's a telco, whether it's an enterprise, whether it's a business.
Of course.
So that's where I think a lot of companies falter, because they think the same heroism that you need for first customer or the second will apply to the 10th. I will say that maturing your product and scaling your product and the feature set is where the focus should be, and making sure your team is working through an engineering discipline. That's where I think that mindset shift or that philosophy shift, a lot of people resist, or a lot of organizations don't go through that. So this is just my experiences. Doesn't mean these are the each person experiences and learns from it. So these are the things that I observe firsthand. So doesn't apply in every case, but I just wanted to share that.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to drill down a little one level deep on that. So when you talk about forcing discipline on the engineering teams, how do you manage that in a different scenario? What's the specific things that have really worked, right? And B, I mean, I still wanted to just circle back on, did you feel that going from that systems engineering approach to something which was quite different, right? I mean, containers and all of that stuff that we're doing was different, right? So how did any of your engineering leadership principles have to adapt to that, or were they the same? You just had the underlying technology changed. What's your thought on that?
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed that point. Yeah, I think so I will say that if you have a software-only product, right? So all the modern principles that are there, CI/CD, nightly builds, automation, even deploying your builds, daily, weekly, bi-weekly. Those things were new to me, in a sense that we had very waterfallish previously mechanism, because hardware products typically you don't launch every second day, right? So, but I think the advantage of software-only products is that everything is in your control, in a sense that if you can build and there's no one size fits all. People quote like Amazon does this and Google. Each company has to make sure that based on their capacity and team and your target customers and target product, what is the right methodology, right? So I believe that agile development, for example, and having small teams and having frequent releases, and the frequent, I say you can draw a line that you can release every 2 weeks, you can release every month. It has to be based on what fits your I'll say organization and your needs also. Software only product also means that you can with cloud, whether it's Amazon or Azure, you don't need to have any dependency on physical servers or deploying something that requires a lot of manual steps. Or if you're big into automation, all the good principles that you need, right? You need, CI/CD should be heart of it. Automation should be heart of it. Making sure that unit testing is embedded in. So all the good principles that we learn, I think those can be easily applied. And I felt that software only, deliverables gives you a lot more freedom and speed. One thing that I noticed was that the ideal state, nirvana state, is you write a code, everything automated, you run these things, and then you deploy it, which is what have been quoted. I believe not every organization can reach that point. It's a journey. So that should be your end goal. I know there were a lot of philosophical differences also, that what level of testing is needed. So there are people who believe there's no testing. Developers should be testers, or there are people that waterfall testing. So I'm not a philosopher, because what I've experienced all kinds of scenarios. I'm more a pragmatist. What I've seen, what takes to deliver to the target customer audience, right? What your product is. So I still feel that. So right now in my current company, we have completely agile teams. QA is embedded into the squad. So or you can say that every team or sub team, we call it squad. So every agile team builds something that's fully tested and comes out of it. But I still have a system testing team at the end, because our product interacts with so many different external systems that for me to expect that every engineer, somebody writing some microservice for A, B, and C to understand all the external partner integrations that are there and to validate they are not broken will not be the case. So I think what I will say is that you can pick up these best practices and you can have a hybrid approach which suits your needs. So in my current company, we are externally waterfall, means we deliver at a cadence. Internally, we are agile. Like we have nightly builds, but we don't launch to our customers every second day because our business cannot afford it because we have some hard lines along hardware along with it, or we have some I'll say pre-processing needs to be done by the company. So my point is that once you go to a company or you start a company, you need to understand your customer, you need to understand your organization, and then what you can do is you can pick up these best practices that are there and pick the right mix that makes your team successful. So you can read a book and say, I'm going to copy this, right? I don't, and I've had long discussions with those, but to me, that's an ideal. My question to you is, how many products have you launched? How many million people have used what you have launched, first of all, right? So that's the first thing. And that comes with experience, right? So, and not every product is the same. Like I think Afan asked, like hardware, software products are different. Software only products are different. B2B software products are different. Consumer software products are different. So you need to understand your target audience and then understand your organization and then, make the right decisions. I don't know whether please feel free to dig deep. I think I'm just trying to see if I'm hoping I'm answering your questions.
No. This is wonderful. I'll let the people later on ask more further questions around it. I'm just laying the groundwork for people to have insights. So I think the next sort of connection I wanted to make was, and this can be light, but internally we felt that I've built sort of products on my own or sort of worked with clients. Understanding the requirements from the client perspective of what needs to be built and then what gets communicated to the engineering team, there's this chasm in the middle which leads to a little bit of tension. And so I wanted you to define just what would be your ideal role of a project manager. How would you want it from an engineering perspective? What works, what's ideal, as you said, what's ideal, what ideal is, but what practically works, how does it work, what would be your suggestions to the engineering side to learn, as well as perhaps the project management side, which we both have at eMember and outside it as well. So
yeah, I think a very good question. So I think, frankly, I have been so I believe that especially I think so. I'll start with the startup first, and then I'll give you an example in my current company. So startups, I felt that I need to talk to the customer. So and so like in Ortiva, I was I went with my CEO. I was a VP of engineering. I went to Sprint. I went to Vodafone, who are our customers, and listen to their problems, right? Because I feel that in those translations, that through a proper product channel, things can be misinterpreted, or sometimes with your experience, you can see things 2 steps ahead that they will not see, right? So I've been pretty adamant about it. So but I don't like PR. I mean, I still, if the company have a process of PRDs, sure, but I want to listen and ask questions directly. So that has been my philosophy. So in most of the companies like Vicodus, Ortiva, Plumgrid. Plumgrid, obviously, I think Pere and I, you used to your tag team. I think he was doing a lot more customers, but I prefer to have customer need, customer problem statement. This is true when you are, I'll say, getting your first few customers. Once you scale, right? When you have a very generic product that hundreds of customers are using it, then it's not feasibly scalable because sales will be getting deals from left and right. But when you're building something initially at that phase of a life cycle of a startup, that's what I've been doing. So I would like to. So I'll give you an example. Like when I was in Ortiva, and they were deciding between us and another vendor. I was adamant that I need to talk to the decision makers of that decision. And it was Vodafone. It was 3 UK. I think 3 is a big telco group. So they, and I remember all night I was in the call with them before they make a decision. They were asking me technical decision. They were asking me can you do this, and when can you do this, and all that, right? So that helped to close the deal. But what I'm trying to say is that you still will have, if that opportunity comes, I prefer that the key, if you're in that position, you should understand customer needs, but also customer pain points later on. Once you have, good to just call a customer and say, what are your pain points? Sometimes those don't reach you, and you're fixing all those bugs, but the pain points, and it just happens because of the layers of translation that happens along the way. But it depends on life cycle of the company. Current company, like Sleep Number, is a consumer company. So here, there is project management kind of organization. I'll say a layer, but I created a technical program management layer, which manages the technical projects in parallel. So there are at a program management at 1,000 feet level that they manage, and then there is like technical details that within different teams, how the software is coming together and managed. There's a value. There are people I've seen that they say there's no management needed. I think very early, when you're 4 people in a garage, maybe, but when you have products that have billions of revenue or millions of revenue, I think it's important. But making sure that you, no matter what phase of company you are in, understanding the customer needs and pain points, I think that's where you need to find a channel to get that, right? Because I will say that it will be enlightening to you, because a lot of times people think I know everything. And then you talk to a customer and they'll say, really? I mean, this is so easy solution and you're suffering because of that. Why can't we, the next maintenance will fix it, right? And that never came through that Jira or somehow I don't. So that happens, right? So I will recommend that, when you go in your career higher in your roles, I think make sure customer focus is important, and make sure you find those channels to get that feedback, both positive, negative, and needs also. That helps, I think.
Awesome. So basically, essentially, the engineering team should be trying to work with the project manager if there is a layer to get that insights, because that should affect their decision making internally as well. Great point.
I think just one comment is that that it becomes the same thing. If PRD is still, people, there are organizations that say they don't need a PRD, but there are still organizations that have PRD. If the PRD is thrown over the wall, that you're a PRD, say, and you don't understand why this requirement is, what will it solve for a customer or a need or whatever, I think then it means that it's, I think that's not how I operate. When you're reading requirements, it has to be formalized. I understand that, but you need to be able to correlate it, why that's coming in, what exactly it's solving, what problem is solving, and how it will all come together. If you don't have that understanding, then it's that's very decoupled from the reality then, right? So,
yeah. Got it. Awesome. So last question before I open the floor perhaps is sort of around, you've been through all of this experience, and then we've talked about that from the very early on in mid 2000s, you were actually building offshores and you were interacting with teams across globes. Even PlumGrid, you had 3 different zones that you were working with. Now you have 5 zones that you just mentioned. How is the engineering management now looking like, given the post-pandemic, hybrid is the new reality, right? Or even sort of Imamba, like right now, has teams which are all over the place within Pakistan, right? So do you, from your experiences, how quickly has that translated, and where do you see that in the future? Do you see some new methodology showing up? Is there need for that? What's your take on it, basically?
I think this is an amazing question. So again, I have a couple of stories there, but yeah. So pandemic, right? 2000. So it has changed the world. I mean, we will be, you'll not be truthful if we say nothing has changed. How we operate, how teams interact, how teams produce, this have been. So I'll give you a few examples. The first one is that me and many of you, I've flown all the way for a very basic meeting, all the way to Atlantic to Sweden and come back. Customer meetings are fine, but before, the concept was remotely, nothing gets done, right? So that was the first thing that changed. And for me also, when I started, I realized that my current team so I scaled my team from like 50 odd to right now we have 350 people. Most of that scaling happened in pandemic in 2000. So what happened was when we realized that we have this roadmap we have to deliver, and then I started thinking about offshoring. April 2020, what happened there, right? So I was like, and then slowly we realized that the world is not ending in a few months. Initially it was a shock, and then you realize. Then I said, no, we have to do it, right? We have to scale, we have to offshore. So I was able to select a partner, kick it off, build a team, scale it to 100 people in 6 months, not even visiting once, all virtually, right? And that to me, if somebody told me before pandemic, I'll say, this is joke. It's not even possible, right? So that completely changed change. So that was in Eastern Europe, this partner. And still, to me, they were sending me those nice videos of their office that they set up, which we never visited. I wanted to visit, but never. And the team scaled up and performed extremely well. So what it meant was that pandemic, and to me, talent is what I go after now, right? Even when I was hiring, preference was Bay Area in my US team. Now I have people in Seattle, I have people in Boston, I have people in Philadelphia, in Austin, and Houston. I could have never done it before. So what happens is that you need to be able to find the right people with the right, I'll say, talent, the right mix, the right chemistry. And location, to me, is not that important anymore. Pretty much everything that we have done last 2 years is all remote, virtual. Slowly now we are doing in person now, but just setting up an office of 100 people, we're not even going once. And the person who was my local lead, I met her 6 months ago. She came to US, first time ever, right? So these things are not. If you were asking me like 2 years ago, I would say this is impossible. You cannot do that. You have to be there. You have to sit there. And this is what I did. Like when went to Pakistan, went to India. Like how many times I came to Plumgate office, right? But I think the key is that lots can be done. I think we'll end up in some kind of prediction is hard, but I think it's a hybrid. Some kind of a hybrid. Some things have to be done in person. It doesn't replace everything, but some things, a lot of things can be done virtually, as long as you have the right team, the right connectivity, the right, passion that they have. And you don't have to, if you find the right team, you don't have to, if you're babysitting a team or you have to manage a team, it means that manage in the sense that obviously you have to sign. But if you have to say, okay, what have you done to, that means that you're not going to be successful, right? So that it has to be that passion that drives it. That I'm bringing about, whether it's work, whether it's the technology you're working on, something else has to be there. Otherwise, it's a job, and then job is a job, right? So it has to be passion, then a job, then everything else automatically falls in place. So I will say that pandemic have been an eye opener for me. I used to reject talent in US. Oh, you're not in Bay Area, you're not moving. Sorry. No, my data science lead is in Boston and Philadelphia, not even San Jose, right? So I wouldn't have, my key cloud architect is in Austin, right? So I never been. They come once 6 months or 8 months, right? So that's where I think that's the power. But every day we are on the call together. We are talking like this 2D, not 3D. But it's amazing, I think. And every work is getting done. Releases are on time. So I think that's where I think it's all boils down to. I think it has been a blessing, I would say, in a disguise, that it challenged us to revisit our assumptions of how work should be done.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those assumptions have been revisited, and different people will adopt it differently. It doesn't mean what I'm saying is a gospel that everyone should follow. But I think these days, lots can be done, and that opens the power. If you look in the context of Pakistan, right? Talented, engineers. You need connectivity. You need brain. and passion, and then rest is all
Yep.
all happens automatically. Yeah.
Great. So I think what you basically said is, if I'm rephrasing you a little bit, and correct me if I'm wrong, pandemic forced us to change our assumptions, but the same base things need to be correct, right? You need to have a good
Yeah.
team, you need to communicate well, you need to, and so those haven't fundamentally changed. Maybe the tools have, but it has essentially allowed us to actually tap into a wider pool more easily than before. So that's a great observation. Thank you so much. I think I'll open up the floor for people who've been listening and I want to ask you questions. I will start with the Zoom and then go to the YouTube people. I think Fahad is the first one. Fahad, can you unmute and then ask your question, please?
Assalamu alaikum. So, thank you so much, Faisal. This was a very useful session, at least for me. I have two questions, and Afan, let me know if I can ask both of them right now. And if not,
Yeah.
I can ask. Okay. So my first question is around agile teams. So you said that you have a lot of experience in managing agile teams, which are sort of in different geographies. I'm basically, as for context, I'm a cross-functional project manager over here, as well as also managing the DevOps vertical. So my question is, in the past I had agile team of 5 to 7 people, around 8 people actually. And when the size was the team was much easier to manage, and all the typical agile and Scrum methodologies we were easily following. But recently, my team just scaled to 20 plus, and I've been reading about this recently for quite a while, and I have come across many different solutions, like have cross-functional sub teams within the whole team, have feature teams, and then have operations team. Divide your teams by different verticals, for example, front-end team, back-end QA, etc. In your experience, what has worked for you when you have worked with this number of a team?
Yeah, I think good question, Pat. So I mean, I'll say the simple philosophy is agile teams. I prefer not to have beyond some number. Because then it becomes unwieldy. So I won't dictate that it should be 7 or 10 or 12. But if the agile teams are too large, then ideally your stand-up should be 15 minutes, and it becomes unmanageable. So typically what we do is, we use the term squads internally in the current company. So our squads are, we have many squads, but I'll say average size is around 7. If it becomes too big, we try to split it into independent squads. And also the point is that we have a mixture of both. We have functional squads. So there's embedded software squad, there is a cloud software squad, and we have cross-functional squads also. So I will say that I'm a believer in that. Pick the best combination for the problem you're trying to solve, or what your needs are. I'm not. There are a lot of people who are purist, right? So they say, "Oh, this is a definition," and we are. So I think very simple. I mean, if your teams are too big, I don't think that will be efficient. So you should break it down into whatever you call it, sub teams or sub squad. So we try to make sure our teams and our squads or agile teams each is not more than 7 to 8 people. Doesn't mean that every team is 7 people. We have 4 people squads also. We have 10 also, but we don't have 20 because that will be too big. So I don't know if that helps you or not.
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much.
Okay, I think we'll ask Ahmed Waleed for the next, and then Fahad, we can circle back after the loop has completed. Ahmed, can you unmute and ask?
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum. That was a very useful session. Thank you for that. My question is around one of the topics of engineering management regarding tech talent retention, which is, of course, a lot in line, at least recently with the pandemic changing things. So how did it change in different phases in your journey? How did you manage to retain tech talent? And what do you think are the key factors in retaining people? And do you plan ahead for it? Over to you.
Yeah, good question. So I think I'll give you some recent examples. So obviously, tech attract talent and retaining talent both are important aspects because depending on the complexity of your product, it takes a while for the talent to become productive. So we have been lucky that our and I think we are in, the key team is in San Jose, and right, all the big giants are there, so they're always poaching. So we have been very lucky, and I think it's a mixture of a lot of things. So one is empowerment. So it's very important what your culture that you're building in your company. So you empower people, making sure they understand the mission. I mean, the point I made earlier is like if job is if you treat it as a job, then obviously, but if you feel that what you're building can change lives, can improve lives, can do some whatever that XYZ that you're doing, that has to be the first thing, right? Making sure that the technology that you're working on excites you, right? You have if you're working on state of the art technology, that strikes people. If you can see your contribution and your impact you're creating, that also attracts people. So it's not one size fit, but it's a mixture of things that you need to make sure that environment that you create, the culture you create. Obviously, there are other factors like compensation and benefits and XYZ. Those things are there. But I believe that if these things are foundational, then you get a much higher retention in talent. And I've data from the last 3 years from the team I'm leading, and even previously in startups that I mentioned, minimal because startups, again, you can say that there is a common mission, and that you are very early, and retention typically is pretty good in startup for the employee. But in larger companies, I think established companies, it becomes harder. So I think technology, mission, impact, empowerment, culture, those things are important. I feel that's where I have people who come and say that I got better offer, but I'm enjoying my work and the team and the whole management and the empowerment I feel, that I can see my contribution, that what I'm making a difference. So sometimes those are the things that also drive people, right? As an engineer, you do something and you see the impact either to the company or to the consumer or to the customer. That also drives it. So I will say that based on whatever you're building, those factors are also equally important. And obviously, you have to be competitive and all those other benefits. I'm not going there, but these things are more important to me, I think. And we have been lucky that we have been, had very, very low, high retention, and low attrition, and that's where I feel. And connecting with your people, right? So, for example, I'll give you one lesson that I learned. I learned very early on that human level connection is very important. So for my direct reports, I never miss my 101. And I have it weekly almost. And now I have a lot of reports now, so I have bi-weekly. But I will be working 100 hours a week, but I will never miss 101. Because that's the time you connect with that individual. And a lot of people, that's the first thing they get rid of, right? They say, oh, I'm so important, I don't have time for these small talk. That's not the case, right? So if you connect with your key leaders and you are connecting and your human level connection is there, that is very powerful, right? So so I don't know whether I'm answering your question, but I think it's a mixture of your management style that makes a difference. Yeah.
It does. Thank you.
Okay. So Jabir, I think you had the question. You can unmute him.
Same. Thank you, Faisal, for your this special talk कि जिसमें हमें बहुत सारी चीजें सीखने को मिली. तो मेरा क्वेश्चन है around how to balance the quality and agility. क्योंकि हम मोस्टली ऐसे प्रोडक्ट्स पे काम कर रहे होते हैं कि जिसमें POC से स्टार्ट होते हैं MVP, और वहाँ पे स्पीड जो है वो एक टाइम टू मार्केट बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होता है. और एक वक्त जब ऐसा आता है तो फिर एक क्वालिटी हिट शुरू हो जाती है कि हमने तो डिलीवर किया है लेकिन वो चीज़ स्केल नहीं है, ठीक है, फिर ब्लेम गेम स्टार्ट हो जाती है। तो हम इसको कैसे बैलेंस कर सकते हैं कि हम टाइम टू मार्केट भी हो और क्वालिटी भी ना गिरे, और मे बी इस तरह के चैलेंजेस आपने भी फेस किए होंगे?
No, I think it's a very good question, Jabir. So I'll give you I mean, even Plumgrid is an example, but I'll give you a more recent example. So when I joined the current company, I think we were at one release a year, one release every 18 months, barely. Now we are doing 22 releases a year right now. So I think what it happens is that you have to. And also I think your question was about POC and so I think one thing is more about being aware and educated that POC is a different purpose than when you're deploying something to a customer in a production environment. The requirements and the quality, the stability, the maturity, bars are different. So that's always the challenge because you see something working on a laptop and it's cool. I mean, it's ready to go. No, it's not ready to go. So what are the steps to take it, right? So I think first is understanding that how do you get from point A to point B? And I'll give you another example very soon. So how do you get from point A to point B? And defining those milestones that, how do I reach that quality? And I think you can get high velocity if you're doing a lot of automation testing, a lot of unit testing early on. So the quality starts always leftmost, right? So, but understanding at what time, at quality bar, it's ready to be deployed. And there'll always be pressure. I mean, please don't get me wrong. I mean, in my roles, I have seen pressure because in some cases, if you don't deploy, the company will shut down. So that's, in startups, typically that's the pressure. So I mean, that's always balancing. And sometimes if you feel that this, there are more quality improvements that can be done, you can, and there's a business need that requires, some make or break, you can definitely, if say your bar was 100 and you are 80, you can then quickly do a quick turnaround and a patch or something to work around it and think, have not reactionary, that no, when it crashes, then I will work on it. If you know that you are still not ready, that you can continue to work on it and proactively give a patch. But I think this balance, there's no, simple answer to that. You need to make sure that so I'll give you an example. So we do a lot of AI algorithms, right? And AI algorithms, you need to be able to, and many of you are in research, so you can see a nice publication that somebody proves something works on XYZ, and then you see, 10 people, he did, or 10 customers or something, right? And when your target market is millions, like in my current company, what it means is that your requirement and your bar for sensitivity, specificity, accuracy of that algorithm has to be much higher bar than you show it working on 2 people or 10 people, right? So that's where I think what we did was we built a framework of versioning, which we call maturity framework. And we said, okay, this is at version X, Y, and when it reaches Z, then it's ready to be, right? And that helps the organization also understand that it's not ready to go right now. So whatever works for you, I think there's no easy answer, but if you need to be able to balance. Pressure will always be there. Please don't, it won't be like, oh, sure, take your time, come back in 2 years. There'll always be business needs and pressure. But obviously, at what point it becomes detrimental to your customer and to your business, right? So you should be able to take a stand there, and you can show with data that, I need, we need 1 more month of testing or whatever. And that might be the right approach. So sorry, there's no magic bullet for these kind of questions, and typically the easiest way would be to make sure you define some processes. If you can build a process and like I did, like a versioning, it becomes very easy that if somebody is not technical, doesn't understand AI, knows that version X is not ready, still Y, and then Z will be the one that will be ready to go. So that helps me, because otherwise somebody has to explain all these things, and that might not be the easy conversation. So whatever works, I think find the mechanism to convey that, and then automation, making sure that left shift of quality in your team, that everyone is doing their unit testing, and that all helps, because quality starts when you write the code. That will also help you accelerate some of that maturity that you want.
Yeah. So thank you, Jabir. Okay, so I think Faisal, I saw you looking at the clock as well. I think we're running, we're close to the.
No, I think fine. I was just somebody pings me. Yeah.
Okay, so just on that note, I do remember one you came in as VP engineering. One thing that because Jabir mentioned something about time to market, and I remember you giving the engineering team this one statement that somehow is still stuck in my head, where you showed up and there's something on Google, the Google suite that we had at that time that was not working. You said, "Hey, everybody, look." Even Google has some releases which don't have everything fixed. So engineering releases are not meant to fix everything. They have to ship on time, but it doesn't mean that you have everything fixed. So that was a very insightful moment for me, because that crystallized this idea that at some point you have to sort of make that trade-off, and that trade-off is part of engineering in some sense. Okay, I think Fahad still had one question. So Fahad, if you can make it really quick and we can then close out, because there's nobody on YouTube who has asked a question as yet. So I'll give that last, but keep it short so that we can close it immediately, quickly after this.
Okay, sure. So, the other question is basically, so we are creating a B2B product for an enterprise, right? So, as you talked about having exposure to the customers, listening to their problems and pain points. But in our case, because we're a services company, we don't own the product. There is an additional layer of so basically our customer are the people who will sell this product which we are building to their customers. So we at eMumbai, we are not really talking to the customer. So but we do get some good requirements and insights from the people who we are talking to. They're basically from the office of CTO. So what are your thoughts on this? Should we push our customers to take us to their end users, or should we just stay and just talk to our customers?
Yeah, I think again, good question. I'll say, given your dynamics, right? So you are a service provider to A, and then A serving B. I think sometimes it might be challenging for them. So your best bet would be from A, in the organization that you are working with, is talking to the customer. And I think the way you can work around that is that when you get a requirement of PRD or SRD or whatever that document is, or the ask is coming to you, you should be able to ask questions. So start thinking how it will be used, right? And then ask questions so that I think the key would be, somebody says, if this should be like this, you should be able to read that requirement and completely understand that whatever you're building, when somebody is using that, how and why and how, in what way will it be used, and what are the different scenarios, and so that will help you. So I think if you don't have the opportunity to talk to the customer, you can ask those questions from whoever the person is, they're the product owner or product manager, and ask from a customer's head, right? So read the requirement and say, ask questions that will help you understand the why you're doing it, right? Right now, what will happen is it will come to you and you will say, how? Okay, I use Java, and that's the how part of it, right? But the why is what is important, that you need to be able to understand, and that will help you more visibility when you're implementing it. That there might be corner cases, there might be things that you might miss, but when you put the customer hat on it, right, then you will say, okay, maybe this might be, somebody said timeout should be 60 seconds. Okay, whatever, why 60 seconds? I mean, when it times out, what happens? So I mean, in your case, I think it will be very difficult. I understand, because even I have service providers, and I don't expose them to to my customers. I was given an example where I was the direct, like right, the company that's building the product. But in your case, you can just make sure you start thinking as the why part, right? Whatever you're doing, the why that is needed, right? That will help you. I think we are engineers, and we always how is what we go with, like how do we implement this, and this, that's all good. But I think I think why is the key thing that so.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time, Faisal. I think we are a little over as well. Appreciate it a lot. I know you're VC investing these days in Pakistan as well. If you want to end with some statement around that, that'll be great. Otherwise, I want to just close it.
Yeah. No, I think Pakistan, I will say that, I'm very, last 3 years, we have seen really startups in Pakistan to the big stage. And I'm really, really happy. And the talent has always been there. It's just that now the startups based in Pakistan are raising money and being visible at a global stage. So really happy. I hope there are a lot of successes that will, because it's a positive reinforcement, right? So success drives success. So if you'll have more success, then a lot more people will do this, and I think that's the right thing to do. Technology these days, I said, you just need a brain, a laptop, and a connectivity. And it doesn't matter where you sit, who you are, which country you're born in, right? So that you guys are very, I'll say, blessed and lucky that cloud is there. You can build and launch and things, and from your dorm, right? So that part was not possible, I'll say 5, 7, 10 years back. I have to buy. I remember stacking servers and in the server data room and all that before. So I think, yeah. So I'm very happy. I hope things remain stable, macro in the world. Macroeconomic and Pakistan also. Then I think the potential is endless.
Okay, thank you so much for your time, especially so late for you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate this. We'll touch base when you're next